I do not know if the home remembers. I do not know if the home finds us through its windows, the planks in its floors, the cupboards and the carpets, or the appliances. But today we honor the place where we grew up, the house or apartment or country of our origin, the dwelling we call home, or the sanctuary of our youth that binds us to all those who occupied that space with us and holds for us the quiet meaning of our early selves. This very self who somehow communicates through time and space, through memories, and reminds us of who we are now and what we might still become.
My Memory Fails Me, composed by the students at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. My memory fails me. Things happened. We both experienced them. You saw them your way, colored by experiences in your past or by resentment or impatience. I saw them my way, colored by fear, by pride, by the fact that I am myself and not you. So our memories of what happened were very different from the start. And then, before we knew it, memories hardened into myths and myths into dogma. Now we find ourselves divided. We stare across the chasm, but we don't see each other. Parent, partner, friend, child, denomination, nation, race, class, creed. I'm tired of being alone on my side of the chasm. I'm using up so much energy fearing and resenting you. Sometimes I wish you and I could crack the dogma, peel away the mythology, and trade memories. What would it be like if we could see each other's pictures of the history we share? If we could see each other? What we need here, you and I, is a little humility and a lot of house cleaning. Humility to say, only God sees history whole and knows the whole truth. All I have is my perception. It's valid, it's precious, it's fragmentary. Maybe I ought to try seeing as God sees from all the angles. House cleaning, memory is selective, and I'm carrying around years of slanted, narrow memories. I can't see past them. It must be the same to you. What we need to do is to let some things go. Trade a few. Listen. Maybe, if I ask you how things look to you, between us, we'll see something we've never seen before.
Nature and Memory by Virginia Woolf. Nature, who has played so many queer tricks upon us, making us so unequally of clay and diamonds, rainbow and granite, and stuffed them into a case often of the most incongruous. For the poet has a butcher's face, and the butcher a poet's. Nature, who delights in muddle and mystery, so that even now, the 1st of November 1927, we know not why we go upstairs or why we come down again. Our most daily movements are like the passage of a ship on an unknown sea, and the sailors at the masthead hold their glasses at the horizon and say, "Is there land or is there none?" To which, if we are prophets, we must make answer, yes. If we are truthful, we say no. Nature, who has so much to answer for besides the perhaps unwieldy length of this sentence, has further complicated her task and added to our confusion by providing not only a perfect rag-bag of odds and ends within us, like a piece of a policeman's trouser lying cheek by jowl with Queen Alexandra's wedding veil, but has contrived that the whole assortment shall be lightly stitched together with a single thread. Memory is the seamstress, and a capricious one at that. Memory runs her needle in and out and up and down, hither and thither. We know not what comes next or what follows after. Thus, the most ordinary movement in the world, such as sitting down at a table and pulling the inkstand closer to one, may agitate 1,000 odd, disconnected fragments, now bright, now dim, hanging and bobbing and dipping and flaunting, like the underlinen of a family of 14 on a line in a gale of wind.
Well, I'd like to start with a question. Does anyone here remember my last family reunion? Let's see, I think it was 2017. No? Well, I shouldn't be surprised that you don't. But I'd be willing to bet that most people in this room can recall brilliant summer sun shimmering across the surface of a lake, the sound of gentle waters lapping against rocks, changing summer skies, eclectic meals prepared and shared by generations, warm welcomes, quick smiles, biting jokes, or long hugs accompanied with just a hint of joyful tears. Maybe there was a large family tree printed on or drawn on a paper spread across the table. Photos scattered or stacked nearby, as mysterious as they are precious. Each photo begging to bring out slight embarrassment as you or some relative struggles to identify that person in the dark coat standing next to what surely must be Aunt Maggie. I think I remember that coat. What year could it have been? It's not on the back of the photo. As your memory searches for clues, you ask yourself how you could not identify this person with certainty. Does anyone remember 1979? That's the year I moved to Rochester. What I can recall of that time is a seemingly small, almost quaint city. Sometimes I can almost see past the layers of development into the past, beyond what the sands of time have altered. I remember that year because it was a new home for me, a new beginning, beyond anything I could have imagined at that time. It was also a move that brought me to this place where I stand now. What I don't remember is even one road leading to downtown that was completely dug up or reduced to a single lane. Well, okay. Maybe someone remembers the year I came to this church. And by now you're thinking, oh my God, is this just about him? I beg for patience. Well, to be truthful, I barely remember the year myself. But there's a pretty solid memory as to why I came here and what it has meant in my life. This spiritual home has been place for me, and this space has become so familiar in memory that I barely notice what newcomers notice, such as the dated concrete block walls. If I would have a desire or need, I would probably be able to pull quite a few visions through time and space from these walls, and that is the comfort of home to me. But lastly, what if I asked us if we could recall a member of the church who is no longer with us, someone we knew well? Would you know the manner of their dress? What was the type of car they last drove to church, or the exact color of their home? Even if this was something we chose to remember, the answers would provide little connection to their lives. But if we were to recall their talents and how they shared them with the church, and the committees they served on, or even the fellowship activities we were joined with them, then we would know them once again. Wood or brick, gypsum or cement block, these walls hold those memories for us within this space. Well, on a personal level, I have always held a fascination of a sense of place. The place where we feel we most belong. The place that allows us to be comfortable with who and what we have become. Where the search for identity is replaced with the sense of belonging and the feeling of coming home. A sense of place becomes a sense of peace. At times, it can be the dominant Western viewpoint that regardless of location, the individual remains unchanged. It is believed that your psychology, your consciousness, and your subjectivity don't really depend on the place you live. We may feel sentimental or nostalgic attachment to the places where we live, but we see them as separate from our inner selves. In other cultures or belief systems, though, the home isn't just where you are, it's who you are. This by the Reverend Carrie Johnson. As I travel around Kimmerow, Wales for the second extended stay, people often ask me why I have chosen to return to this specific place. Initially, I fumbled over how to articulate and explain my affection for, connection with, and sense of belonging to this beautiful country, a place I had barely thought about until just a few years back. How does one describe an experience arriving in a foreign country to be immediately met with the sensation of coming home? How does one describe an experience wherein one's internal busyness, preoccupations, and anxious habits find that still, quiet center to guide and sustain? How does one share a heart at rest, a mind at peace, a soul sustained? Sure, some might say it has everything to do with the slow pace of sabbatical life, but I know it's beyond the obvious. Well, I have learned the Welsh word, that the Welsh have a word for this sense of coming home, a sense of belonging and connection to place. They call it cynefin. Cynefin would convey the sense that we are all have multiple pasts of which we can only be partly aware. Cultural, religious, geographic, tribal. The word is sometimes used to describe an environment where a person feels they belong, or knowledge and sense of place that is passed down through the generations. It can also refer to a fleeting moment in time, a place or time when we instinctively belong or feel most connected. In these moments, what lies beneath the mundane existence is unveiled, and the joy of being alive can overwhelm us. I am told the farmers use this word to describe how a sheep knows its patch on the mountainside. The mountains are vast, and the sheep could certainly wander far afield, but stay close to home. Sitting here at the edge of Mynyd Du, Black Mountain, communing with the grazing sheep, I've come to appreciate their sense of belonging to a place, their own little patch in a vast world of possibilities. If only we humans could settle in and find a peace in belonging to a little patch in the vast universe. So as the Welsh would say, there you have it then. It is Cynefin. And yes, at times my heart is humbly overwhelmed with gratitude and joy for this time of being in a place that holds me. This statement brings back my thoughts to the 1970s when I was temporarily employed by the Department of Natural Resources. I worked for interpretive services for parks, doing some illustration and display design. The regional naturalists came up with a concept called biocultural regions for Minnesota as a way of interpreting people and landscape, defining culturally how Europeans settled in Minnesota. People settled in places that gave them the greatest sense of home. It was the landscape that helped sustain a vision of home that could only otherwise be visited in memory. It was a home beyond four walls. It was a sense of place. A sense of place is deeply rooted in all of us. The home or homes we grew up in contributes to our sense of place and belonging, and to a greater degree, our own importance. As stated by Jerry Berger, PhD, who's professor of psychology at Santa Clara. In his book, Returning Home, people spent a significant amount of time at home, often derived a defining sense of self from their childhood homes. And just as we consider important individuals, the groups we belong to, and the significant events in our lives as part of who we are, most people think of significant places in their lives as part of their identity. The home is a central setting of our life experiences. Life experiences and identity processes can create deep, effective bonds between us as well as our homes. Homes can create a sense of belonging to a place. Place anchors us and creates an attachment. Recollections of place may differ in meaning for all of us, but there are shared threads. The urge or longing for revisiting is part of self-identity, and in that sense becomes a spiritual journey. Harvesting these memories may reactivate a connection to this younger self, strengthening our sense of who we are. At the outset of Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past, the smell of petite madeleines famously reconnected him to his childhood. The memories they evoked were grounded in images of place, and so it was with Proust. When he succeeded in bringing the long-term memories evoked by the smell of the madeleines to consciousness, it came as a recollection of saying good morning to his aunt in her bedroom. Immediately, the old gray house upon the street where her room was rose up like a stage set. Memories of the streets and country roads of Proust's childhood unfolded from there. Ultimately, the whole of Cambrai and its surroundings taking shape and solidity sprang into being. Professor Berger's research regarding returning to an old home helps us understand the motives and the results of these visits. He finds that roughly 1/3 of Americans over the age of 30 have made a trip to a childhood home to reestablish this sense of self, and that another third understands this feeling, and they say they may also make the trip someday. Most commonly, this includes the homes people lived in during the elementary school years. Most people believe their childhood is an important part of who they are, part of their identity, and want to feel connected with this earlier time in their lives. Berger says, "We all have childhood memories, but time is the enemy of memory, and people often come to a point where they recognize that that connection to their childhood is not as strong as they would like." The Navajos have a chant. "Remember what you have seen, because everything forgotten returns to the circling winds." And so it might be true of our childhood home. And at this point, I would like to define home by using the same Unitarian Universalist methods that we use to define God, with a whole lot of leeway. We are a diverse people, and we do not all come from the same place. But wherever or however you or I came into being, we came to being most likely in a shared space, surrounded by a landscape of human and environmental influence. And if we allowed our minds to wander, we could venture among the carefully woven threads of time to find one of those threads, our childhood home. The place of settlement and sanctuary, at times a physical object that holds our deepest childhood memories. To revisit a childhood home or place to harvest those memories, to welcome ourselves back to the world again, to relearn ourselves, and, as Aristotle pointed out, to learn ourselves is the first step in wisdom. But it is also a spiritual journey, a pilgrimage. Just as many Christians visit the Holy Land, or Muslims trek to Mecca to remind themselves of their faith, we may wish to visit a childhood home or place to remind us of ourselves and experience the peace and reassurance of who we are. We are tied by the sacred threads of memory to the past, and as we desire, we could walk the surrealistic fields of time and harvest a memory, one that does not always abide necessarily by the spoken language, but rather plays out before us like the hazy visuals of a silent movie, complete with those annoying white scratchy lines that flash by now and then. We could enlist the help of music if we wished. Emotional triggers to the place you belong, call home, or grew up can be found just about anywhere. But music has an uncanny way of bringing out those ties. Only a few days ago, on Thanksgiving Day, the place I was at for dinner was playing Sirius Radio. And after a while, I began to notice that all the songs had a home theme to them. Country roads take me home, bringing it all back home. Home, sweet home. Mama, I'm coming home. Our house. Home is where I long to be. No direction home. The list goes on and on. But today, we need only this space to do some wandering. I welcome all of us to reach into our pockets for a moment, to find that tiny shell that we have saved as memory, to see if we could do some soul wandering. It is time to go home again, if only for a brief moment, to gather some harvest. And I would like to invite you now to sit as you are comfortable, feet flat on the floor. Feel the earth beneath you. You may choose to close your eyes if you like, to take a few deep breaths. Feel your breath. Let it in, take it in, let it out. And imagine you are in or near the place of your childhood. It is a house, or is it an apartment, or maybe it's the home of a grandparent. What does it look like from the outside? Travel to a place of comfort inside the walls. If it was an apartment building, are you able to detect the different odors of cooking as you pass by each door? Without trying too hard, find a place. Which rooms can you see clearly? What hangs on the walls? Are there familiar pictures? Is it possible to see colors? Where might you find the greatest attachment? Your bedroom? Did you share it with a sibling? Move from room to room. Was there a favorite place in your home? You like to spend time? What time of day is it? Maybe you have memories outside the home. What does your front or backyard look like? Where would you go to play? Now, if you would relax without trying too hard, see if you can recall some moment in time with no particular meaning or importance that you always seem to remember, something that attaches you to this place you grew up. You may be with a parent, a friend or sibling, or maybe you're just by yourself. How are you feeling then? Let it settle into your mind for a moment. And when you open your eyes, you could, and if you're comfortable, I invite you to share this with someone nearby, and Jan will call us back together with some music. We have gathered here today to acknowledge all that we have lived and what lives within us in our memories. We give gratitude for the peace that a special place instills in us, and may we always find place as home. Like ancient sheep on the green pastures of the Welsh landscape, may we go with Cynefin and in love. Amen.